Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video. Today, we look at 20 things that can make your fishing better. It could be just reminders, it could be tips and all that. But here's some things that, you should keep in mind to make things better. Just to also give you a better understanding on things. All right. So these are things that I basically always have in mind. All right. Rod lengths. Rod lengths actually affect the way you work your jigs. Longer lengths, of course, when you lift it up, okay, even with the same angle, what happens is that because of the length, the jig will actually travel more, okay? So a shorter rod will give you a shorter travel for each time you crank and bring the rod up. Now, that gives you either an advantage or a disadvantage. If you know exactly that it does that, what you could do is just, move the tip for longer rods. But for shorter rods, of course, you have to have a longer motion. I like longer rods because I feel that, with small twitches, I could animate the jigs more. Now, a lot of jigging actually has a lot to do with how you envision your jig moving, because if you don't do that, try it. Okay, so there's another sub tip there. But when you're animating your jig or you're moving your jig, when you're varying the motions, it will look more natural to fish. And having the accessibility of that function, being able to just twitch your rod tip and have that little change of motion, triggers fish to feed or strike at something that they feel looks more realistic. So it's better to have it there than not. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Okay, with the rods again, Japanese rods are made with better craftsmanship, but there are a lot of brands that give you value from Asia. Okay, not necessarily the Chinese brand rods, although there are some decent ones. Like, take for example the one that I showed you here. This is made by this is from Abu Garcia, but it's Chinese made, and it's really, really good. So there are a lot of rods from Asia that give you a lot of value for your money. Some of them, of course, are but some of them are Asian branded, like made in Malaysia, made Vietnam or whatever, for Japanese companies or Asian companies. I find it fun for Asian companies. I find the rods that they make more fun because they're built so that you can fight with them, and fight really hard with them. And I find that although Japanese rods are nice and everything, you're also in the back of your mind, you don't want to use them like you would an Asian rod, So I find myself going towards the Asian rods for the smaller stuff. Although I do have Japanese rods, but I find myself, just fishing like with less things to think about behind my head, that at the back of my head, I can't be what do you call it? I can't fish as hard as I want. I know that the Japanese rod would probably move the jig better, but it's also a bit more fragile, at least in my mind. Okay. So yeah, I mean, look at Asian rods. There's some really nice ones. The Storms, which I have used extensively for my job before, were really, really good, and I still continue to use them till this day because they're that good. Now, spinning for light jigging. Spinning is actually easier to use. However, I found that overheads give you a bit more versatility. So you'll find me have probably on a typical trip, I would have one spinning, two overheads, something like that, Especially with the smaller jigs, I use the spinning more. and then I would use a lot more of the medium and the heavier stuff. Not really like, I mean, it's light jigging, right? But I would use the smallest jigs with the spinners more than I would with the bait casters. Okay, so this is where this guy comes in, and this is also filled with 4 pound test or less. So for the smaller stuff, I find that I can work the jigs better, and for usability as well. You know, spinning reels are just easier. But overheads, really, they're more versatile because you could actually kind of use them for a lot more things. At least that's for me. Okay, reels. Don't compromise. Okay, buy the best reels that you can. Because at the end of the day, you can play around with the rod, but with the reel, you're stuck with that. You know, I found myself playing around with the rods, and then I discovered that I can get away with, let's say, a substandard rod than with a substandard reel. At the end of the day, you need a reel that's actually tough. Okay, one that's a bit reliable. And when it comes to that, if you are having a budget like most of us do, tilt your budget over to like 70% on the reel, you know, because at the end of the day, that's really what you're going to be fighting with, especially when you hook something big. The rod, it's light jigging, so the rod is going to be flimsy. Now, if you hook something big, your fighting chance is not with the rod, it's with the reel. Low gears have a huge advantage in shallow water. Obviously, you know, if you use something really fast, what happens, and although you can, and I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of people there that have that option, really fast reels. A few cranks, and then, you know, the jig is already on the surface. Works kind of counterintuitive. However, there are some presentations where you would need a faster reel. Okay, like take for example when you're casting up tide, and then the up tiding is when you're fishing where your boat is headed. So if the boat is actually going this way, okay, because the wind is pushing it that way, you're drifting that way, you're fishing away from your boat towards the direction of where it is going. You will need a faster reel to actually make the jig work. Otherwise, you're just reeling the slack and you're fishing the same place. So a faster reel in that sense actually works better. But that's kind of a specialist approach. And for most of us humans, and I'm pretty sure that, you know, there are some guys that are the exception that's watching now. But for us, for most of us, power gear, especially when you're starting out, don't do that thing, you know, just learn what's in front of you first before you actually go towards the more advanced fishing techniques. And this is part of the Light Jigging 101 series. So, you know, although there's a time and place for faster gears, lower gears will give you the most advantage when you're fishing in shallow water. Okay, so as I mentioned, high gears can be used to work more ground, not just you know, the up tiding, but even when you're drifting, you can actually cast farther, and because of the high gear, you're able to actually bounce the jigs and cover faster because you're getting the jig back in. Get a little bit more advanced. I would say this is the next step before up tiding, because up tiding actually gives you a lot of headaches. So, you know, down the line, maybe we can do that. You know, maybe I could go on a trip and then I'll show you guys how it's done. At least my approach to it. Okay. And then this thing with the reels, you know, it's easier to find overhead reels that have lower gears than finding spinning reels with lower gears in smaller sizes. So like take for example for this one right here. This is I found this reel. This is a Caldea LT previous model, and it's the slowest reel that I could find in this size. Shimano doesn't really have in the same speed. I think there are some, but they're still kind of fast. So you know, like I said, lower gears give you an advantage in shallower water. So this is how I found this. Just take note, you know, it's easier to find bait casters, the smaller bait casters with power gears, than like a 3000 size spinning reel. Okay, so that's that. Line, tips on line. So 8 carrier line or more is best for shallow water. So if you have like a 9X braid, 8X, you know, they work perfectly in shallower water. Gives you a really smooth line, texture of the line when it goes through the guides. It doesn't make a sound, and you know, it gives you smoother casts or drops for this matter. And the surface of the line makes you feel the faintest taps from fish, and that's very important, especially for in this kind of segment. Now, there are times when the fish are kind of finicky, and instead of actually slamming it, they just suck it in. Sometimes it also kind of depends on the kind of fish that you're, you know, fishing for. But when it's in shallow water, the smoother your line, the better, because remember, you're also dealing with sand, rocks, and all of that in the bottom, and all of these translates to a kind of vibration at the tip, and you don't want like a rough texture to actually already give you a some sort of frequency at the tip. So when you're reeling in, you know, you're not feeling the jig, 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 jig. You're just feeling whatever it is that your jig is in contact with. It could be sand, it could be mud. Smoother surface of your line actually gives you a lot more sensitivity, especially again in shallower water, you know. So 8X and all that, the stretches and all that, they're not as apparent as it is in deeper water. Fluorocarbon or mono is a question that a lot of people ask, and at around this size range, it doesn't matter. Use what suits you, okay? But know that fluorocarbon will help your jig sink more because it has the same specific gravity as water. And mono floats, although you could use that as an advantage when you're using slow jigs because of how mono actually grabs water. It gives you a lot more flutter time for your jigs. I think it's one of the tips that I actually mentioned in the jig section later. A PR or an FG is important. That is encouraged for light jigging. The transition between your leader and your braid, you know, and also if you notice, the guides on these rods are actually tiny. Having a big knot going in and out of that is a recipe for disaster. So also remember that when you're fighting the fish, sometimes you always, you know, some people say that it doesn't matter because, you know, I keep my knot at the end of the line. But guess what? When you have a fish on and you're reeling, sometimes you tend to forget that there's a knot there. Just learn a PR and FG. It might look intimidating, sound intimidating for a lot of people, you know, learning something and actually trusting that knot, you know. Again, just learn it. It'll make you a better angler. Okay. Gives a transition from the line to the leader smoother, and gives you a lot of options, especially if you want to use a longer leader. To again, I'm a fan of long leaders, and this is to give a long break between your jig and your braid, which is highly visible. So for me, I favor longer leaders, and especially when you're fishing light, you know, you want your leader to go in and out of your reel as like for me as a basic. Okay, I want that line to get into my reel. Here's the thing. When you have that, it's actually easier for someone to actually grab the leader, or you could grab your leader, or just assist someone who's either gaffing or netting the fish, and it's easier that way because you have a bit of a shock factor, that your or shock absorbing factor that your leader gives you, as opposed to just straight braid. Okay. Connections. Snaps can open whether you like it or not. It's not a matter of whether it will open or not. Okay. It is actually a matter of when. Now, 1996, I caught a permit shore jigging, and I got lucky. This is pretty much the first. At 1996, I've been using snaps on jigs. Okay, so if you think that you're actually like, you know, being smart, or actually telling me that I don't have that much experience when it comes to these things, 1996. Okay, I caught a permit. It was 5 1/4 kilos. Okay, I don't know what that is in pounds. On 8-pound test, mono. Okay, at this point, 1996, there's no braid yet, but I was already shore jigging. Okay, I mean, there's pictures of this on my Instagram. Okay, but the snap actually opened. The snap was outside the mouth of the fish, so I don't know how it opened, but it opened. Okay, so that's one of that's the earliest recollection of me actually saying that, geez, these snaps are not a good idea. I got lucky and I caught that fish. I got lucky. But again, snaps, whether you like it or not, they will open, and it's just a matter of when. It's not if they were open or not. Okay? So when you use, I'm not telling you to not use them. I've used them, and sometimes I still use them, But I would rather just tie a good knot direct to the lure instead of actually, switching over. Use them at your own risk. And I'm telling you that it could happen. Okay? And again, it's not a matter of if it will open or not. It's just a matter of when. So keep that in mind. The smaller size of light jigging and the chances you have with it is the perfect place for you to see how your connections work. Okay? Whatever you learn in this segment of jigging, you can carry over to both ends, actually, going micro or heavy. Now, what I mean about this is that if you're using swivels, you're using solid rings, or you're using a direct connection to the jig and all that, light jigging is the place to play around because of the sheer number of strikes that you get. It's not often, but then again, if you actually put statistics together, light jigging versus the heavy jigging, you'll find that for light jigging, you'll find a lot of strikes, more than you would with the heavy stuff, because there's just a lot more smaller fish than there are bigger ones, right? So use this as a platform for experimentation so that you would learn faster instead of actually just sticking to one thing. For me, this is the place where I would do my experiments and then carry that over to either micro or heavier jigging. The weakest point for this whole light jigging thing, okay, or actually for jigging, again, you can carry over a lot of these for heavier jigging and micro, but the weakest point is often the split rings. Okay, so make sure to replace split rings when you buy cheap jigs, and also on the jigs you use a lot. Okay, so like take for example, if this jig is just imagine it's a small one. If I use this, or even with the bigger stuff, right? So if I use this a lot, and it's a miracle that it's still around. If I use this a lot, often change the split rigs on both ends if you're using like a rear hook for, let's say, slow jigging. Always switch out the or replace the split rings when you buy cheaper jigs. Change the components, the componentry. That keeps you away from trouble, especially on lighter jigs, because guess what, this is what gets hammered the most, and there's stresses that affect it. Now on fast jigs you don't need to change them as often as you would with a slow jig, but you know, if like take for example this is a fast jig obviously, so the split ring here is non load bearing, but the consequence of that, if it actually gets weak or rusty or whatnot, fish grabs this, you don't hook it, but when it pulls, takes the jig with you. It takes the jig with it. So oftentimes, split rings, weakest point, just switch them over, problem done. They are cheap, all right? Assist hooks. It's actually cheap to buy good quality light jigging assist hooks. They're not that expensive. Okay, you don't skimp a lot if you buy inferior hooks. So just go and buy like really good stuff from Owner, Gamakatsu, and all other brands. Okay, very reputed brands. Okay, now you know, a lot of people are saying like the Chinese brand BKK and all that, and a lot of people are saying like, oh, this is a good brand and all that. Yeah, but now people are actually finding out that it opens a lot more. So a lot of people that are using like BKK, which is a Chinese brand, and you know, you could go to Instagram to see all the horror stories. But if you're buying that and then you look at brands like Gamakatsu or Owner, you'll see that there's a very small price difference. You're not saving much, especially when you're out in the middle of a trip and then your hooks are opening, or your hooks are opening on like good fish. Kind of a problem there, buddy. So you know, it's better to actually just go branded and reliable brands. You know, VMC, there's Mustad, there's Owner, there's Gamakatsu, you know, a Decoy. So really, there's a lot to choose from, and they're not that expensive. Okay, the smaller size of light jigging and chances that you have with it is a perfect place. Oh, that's the connections. Okay, hold on, let me just delete this. Okay, you can see that I'm actually reading from something here on the side. It also shows you that I actually, these are tips that I have here, just bullet points and stuff. And then after that, when I read it, I just kind of, you know, expand on it. But it shows you I'm not editing things out, right? Okay, PTFE coated hooks are excellent for light jigging. They're also very dangerous, and my God, I've hooked myself so much with these things. Use them only when you're not fishing in a crowd. Okay, so if the boat is not crowded, good idea. Fishing with them on busy boats invites accidents, you know. And also, don't use them when you don't have that much experience. A lot of people kind of look for always an excuse to buy or use good gear, and that's all in good. However, I must warn you that PTFE coated or Teflon coated hooks, okay, this is the same stuff that you have in your non-stick pan. Think about that. So they apply that on hooks. There's Owner, they call it Super Fusu. Okay, PTFE coating for VMC. But what they are, when you actually touch them, they're very oily. Okay, they're I'll show you guys. They're actually gray or something. Okay, so yeah, it's called Super Fuso for Owner. Okay, so right here, and then you see here, this is very slippery, and you know, very dangerous because you don't feel it going in and I've had this accident a lot. There are hooks from VMC that had them. So here's a very good example. Okay, that's PTFE coated, and I think they just reintroduced them. But before, the problem with the hooks is that they rusted really fast. For owners, not so much of a problem, but for old VMCs, they rusted really fast. I think they have addressed it, so the newer versions are actually really good. But again, they're very difficult when it comes to accidents, because you really don't feel them going in. So sometimes, when you have your hook going like about to penetrate, you just go like this. But with PTFE, it just goes in just like that. So especially when I was tying hooks for tying assist hooks, and then bang, I didn't know that I would have this already with the other one. That's why I got into the habit of taping. That's the story, Morning Glory. So PTFE coated hooks, my God, they're so effective. Like when a fish just grabs them, they're hooked. They don't even know it, but they're hooked. And yeah, just note, it's very dangerous. And if you know how to use them though, or if you have experience and you're careful, they're fantastic. Okay. Flash works extremely well. Okay, so like stuff like that, they work extremely well. But it doesn't mean that you have to overdo things. Now, there are a lot of brands that actually have something that's really bushy. Now, if you tie flies, okay, if you tie your own, it's a very good idea to actually borrow a huge tip from fly tying, and that is sparse flies catch fish, bushy flies catch anglers. Okay, and this is something really, I think this is a tip or a reminder that you should always keep in mind when you're choosing assist hooks, because like the bushier that flash is, the more unnatural it actually looks. And I know there's a few fly fishermen in the channel that are subscribers. I know there's a few, okay, but each and every single one of those guys have experienced like fishing, and then the fish are just eating the fly, and this one fly almost doesn't have anything. It's just like, take for example, it always happens with a clouser minnow. So you'll have your eyes a little bit, like one flash left and probably like 5 pieces of bucktail left. And you know what? That fly will outfish a brand new fly. Okay, so take a sheet from the pages of the fly fishing or fly tying book. Sparser assist hooks actually catch more. Okay, now if you disagree, all in good. Hey, you know what? Do you, okay? But my fly fishing experience plus, I don't know, a few years on tying assist hooks have actually showed me that. And guess what? I've helped VMC, I helped Owner, I helped Sea Falcon with assist hooks. Maybe you're more qualified than I am. So, you do you. For jigs like Jig Para Micro, adding a solid ring to the existing assist hook will make it 10 times better. I have a very good example here, so let's do it. Okay, now a lot of the problems that I have with this particular jig is that oftentimes the hook is not facing the right way, so it's just good for me to actually just do it. Okay, so as you can see here, okay, this is just looped on, and that's all and good. A lot of people might say like works better like that. Yeah, fine. But I found that if I did this, it worked even better. And it has served me well. Okay, so I will take one of these. This is one of those solid rings from Tenmouth. Okay, so size 3, I believe. There are smaller ones, it's just that I can't find them. Or you know what? Here, get one of these. These are the ones for the carp rings that I was telling you guys about. You can get them on places like AliExpress and stuff, I guess. Or if you have friends that carp fish, I'm pretty sure that they can actually guide you. These are stainless steel rings, but they're black. And I'm pretty sure there are smaller ones. Okay. So the first step is to take off the assist hook. And then you can just loop it back. And look, this is what I'm saying, okay? So if you are tying directly to the eye, which in this, instance I would, but the hook is actually facing this way. So if you also tie on the split ring, the hook is sideways. Also not good, So solution is, because this is a fast jig, solution is, strictly speaking, it's a fluttering fast jig. So take the hook, assist hook off, like so. Okay. And then we just loop it onto the solid ring. There we go. Tighten this sucker up. So when you do this, actually kind of dangerous. Okay, so I use the jig, just do it like that, okay? And then what we could do is, so it does two things. It corrects the position of the assist hook, and also gives you a good tie-in point, because now you have that solid ring to use for your knot. And just with that small adjustment, I can tell you that this has become 10 times better than what it was. That's it. Okay. I'll put it back on here. But just with the addition of that solid ring, that's it. And now if you look at how they actually made this, you can see how sparse the flash is. So they know what's up. And Jigparas, these 10 grams are literally some of the best there is on earth. All right, now let's move on to jigs. Light jigging has the most diverse choice of jigs out there, okay? Because it's the most common and the most accessible form of jigging available. They're also quite affordable, okay? So it's easy to buy a lot of them. And most of it, believe it or not, it might not be right for your use, okay? So this is a trap because of the jig. And guess what? All these jigs, they're sold with no instructions on how to use them. Okay, some of them, like in the packet, they'll tell you, like, for this. But there are no-name brands out there that just make jigs and they don't really tell you how to use them. Or when you're buying copies and all of that, right? So it's actually kind of up to you to figure things out. The easiest way is like when you're buying, considering how you'll be using them, okay? The depth that you'll be fishing the most, and from there, you choose the shapes that's best for your fishing, okay? Wider jigs will give you more hang time in shallower water. Thinner jigs will get you down faster in deeper water. A cross between those two shapes will be kind of usable for most conditions. So a very good example of that would be the Pesce jig from Sea Falcon. I returned it, but Pesce jig in the jig video, I showed you that jig you can use for pretty much most conditions and all that. Okay, slim, wide jigs like this Jig Para 10 gram. The biggest size of this shape would be the 15. If you look at the 20, that's an entirely different lure. So take note, okay? So instead of just buying Jig Para and you're thinking that the 20 gram Jig Para is the same, no, it's not. As far as the micro jigs are concerned, the biggest would be the 15 grams. But for shallower water, these guys, they're slim, they're wide, they give you a lot of hang time. Shallower water, they're very, very good. For deeper water, not so much. You want something that's, you know, a bit on the thicker side so that you'd be able to work the water column more effectively. So wide stuff for shallower water, thinner stuff for deeper water, and the cross section of the two, you know, or a cross between the two, kind of like wide but thick. They could actually work in most conditions. All right. I was debating to put this on or not, but I think this is one of those things that you have to figure out on your own. But I'm telling you that there are jigs like this, okay? And I've already given clues. So there are some jigs that are so effective that they have caught fish while I was dead sticking, okay? Meaning I cast it out, I didn't do anything. They were just sitting on the bottom. Fish literally just went, picked them up, and then bang, okay? Of the jigs that I've shown in the last video with the jigs and assist hooks, okay, there were 2 there. So it's already up to you to just experiment and see. I already gave you the clue, okay? The president of SOM did not believe me before. Okay, so Masa-san and I were fishing, and I was telling him about this jig, and I was telling him like, hey, you know, this jig catches even if you don't move it. And he goes, really? Boom! And he was like, whoa! You know, so he just cast it out, and I was telling him about this jig, right? And he was holding the rod like this. We're in Palm Jumeirah. And then right when I told him, like, hey, you know what? I gave you that jig. This jig does this, da 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 da. And he was like, oh, really? Bang! He was like, wow, you're right. So there are jigs that do that, okay? There's 3. There's 3 jigs, not 2. There's 3 jigs that do this in the video that I showed. So it's really up to you. Okay, last tip. There's actually a hidden part in one of the videos in the series. So I keep on deleting those guys that actually mention this, but there is one. So for the, what do you call this? For the light jigging, in the light jigging series, there's actually a hidden part in one of the videos. So it's up to you guys to discover where. Now, if someone comments on the bottom, I'm still gonna delete it. Okay, so it's useless. Don't. Just let them figure it out. All right. All right. Now, I think I mentioned something earlier, right? With the, what was that? Yeah, the leader. Okay, so I looked and I think I deleted it, but to have more hang time, there's quite a few things that you could do. Okay, so mono, especially when you're slow jigging, to get a lot more hang time on your jigs, it's easy. You can actually just increase the drag of your leader or your line. For me, I don't use this because I see it as a disadvantage as opposed to an advantage. But there are people that are using thick line and thick leader. And, especially when you're fishing off of a kayak where you don't really have the luxury of taking a lot of rods that would do several jobs. Okay. You have like 1, 2, 3 rods at the very most if you're sensible. If you're someone who's not, then you'll have 5 or 10. But if you're sensible, you're fishing off of a kayak, and then you have 3 rods maximum. You'll have 1 rod probably that has thicker line than the rest. That's the rod that you would use to give you the most advantage on slow jigging or when you're using slow jigs. Basically, what happens is that the current will take the line. Okay, so it will, because the line is the biggest surface area, right? So when the current hits the line, and if you have a thick leader, instead of actually having a straight line like that or like that to the bottom or diagonal, it'll actually go like this. Okay, so current's going this way, lines going that way, like that. Okay, and your jig is here. It gives you a bit more hang time. A very big disadvantage in deeper water. Okay, so maybe I'd use this up to like 50 meters. Use this trick, fishing up to 50 meters, and then over that it becomes kind of a disadvantage. 50 meters is already stretching it out, actually, so probably about 30, and then you also, if you use this technique, you use it together with PTFE, because when the fish grabs it, it'll hook itself and you don't really have to feel it, because the biggest disadvantage of this is that since you're not fully vertical, you lose sensitivity. You won't feel the fish. So if the fish grabs the jig, right, and the hooks are PTFE coated, boom, and then when it runs, you actually feel it. But once the fish are just, biting it and then letting it go, you won't feel anything. Okay, so that's the last tip. And hopefully you've learned something. And if you have, give it a thumbs up. All right? Very important. Give it a thumbs up. Share. And if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, if you want to support, we have hats that you could purchase. And of course, the memberships are there. And I want to take this opportunity to thank each and every single member that has joined and supported. Thank you. Thank you very much. Memberships, of course, help push this channel forward. Alrighty, that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Class dismissed. Oh, by the way, we're starting a new series. So, quite excited for that. Alrighty. See you in the next video.